technology that's involved in putting together and conducting an online match. And the last slide is a kind of a troubleshooting one, how to climb out of a ditch if you find yourself in one. So there's a lot of technology involved in an online competition. Can you all see my screen? Okay. Chat, use the chat window to let us know if you're having problems either with the audio or the video. So here are all the components, and there are a lot of moving parts. First, there's some sort of conferencing system for audio and video, like we're using Zoom right now. Um, the quick recall activity is essentially an auditory activity. So it's fundamental that you have a platform that you can use in order to hear the questions and then hear the answers when the students ring in. That's a separate system from the online competition system. So one of the questions that I get from time to time is, okay, we're logged into QuizBowl PRO, but we can't hear each other. Well, it's because you also need to be logged into Zoom. So you're going to be juggling both of those. You're also going to have some sort of device, probably a PC, that you use in order to host the activity, sort of like being the person operating the buzzer system. So that's the host device. Another device is your connection to the cloud where the program is installed. You might be using a wired connection, a Wi-Fi connection, or the players might be using a data plan on their cell phones. And speaking of the player devices, they could be using a variety of things to be able to compete. And then even after they've identified the device they're going to compete with, they have to figure out how they're going to connect to the network to play. So the trouble is all of these ingredients are involved. So you have to pay attention to all these things. So what I'm going to go through right now is kind of an online competition version of that little speech that you give right before you start a face-to-face match. You're so used to making speeches like turn off your cell phones, put your nameplates up where we can see them, turn them. You got all these things that you do sort of naturally because they're habits, and you need to learn some different habits for online competition. There's a lot of stuff here, but you can handle it. The big two ingredients are the conferencing system and the online competition system. The conferencing system, like I said, is for audio and video, but it's also for sharing your screen. So let's say you've got two teams of 4 players each, and those 4 players are logged in and they can see the scoreboard because it's part of their access to the system. But what if each of those 2 4-person teams has 6 other students on it or on them? So you got 12 more people that need to see the screen so they can follow along. Plus you got 2 coaches, plus you got some well-wishers, some parents and relatives. Well, you don't show them the QuizBowl Pro screen by letting them log into QuizBowl Pro. You just share your screen in Zoom or Teams or whatever technology you got. That's how they'll see the action. And then you've got the online competition system, which you use as a host to set up teams and matches. And then you use that system to run the match, and the players use that system to compete. So my suggestion to you is do like what Rodney and I are doing here tonight. There's 2 of us. So ideally, one person maybe could run the conferencing system, maybe could mute and unmute people and be the moderator. And another person could be running the QuizBowl Pro system and spotting the ring-in winners. I mean, you can mix and match those tasks, but if you've got 2 people, that would be ideal. Doesn't mean you can't do it with 1, but it's ideal if you could do it with 2. So let's talk about your device and your network. And I'm going to move my video so I can see the whole screen. I can't underscore this point. I haven't even made a point yet, but it's really implied in what I'm showing here. I can't underscore this enough. If you know that you're going to be competing 2 months from now from your classroom on a desktop computer, practice there as soon as you can. Don't practice one place and then compete in another place, because there's some things you need to do to make sure that you've got a stable environment for successful competition. One of them that you can do to simplify your life is use a PC to host a match with instead of using a tablet or a Chromebook. The display is bigger generally on a PC, and the sound is more consistent when it's played over a PC. So this is all about you as hosts. If you've got a choice, use Chrome as your browser. The program works with others, not so good with Internet Explorer. It works with Firefox, it works with Edge, it works with Safari, but Chrome is the one we use most for testing. So if you have a choice, use that one. And this is a new feature we just put into the system. I don't know if you saw this, Rodney, but I'm going to go to our website. Are you able to see my my screen now so you can see the website?
No, you're still on the PowerPoint.
I'm still on the PowerPoint. Thank you for that. Okay, let's do a new share and let's share this screen. Now, can you see the QuizBowl Systems website?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Up until a couple of days ago, there were only 2 links up here in the upper right. Join a match, that's for players. Host login, that's for moderators or for hosts. This third connection just got added. So when you identify where you're going to be hosting matches from, go to this test connection page and click this test connection button. And it's going to come back and tell you if you're good, or if it's not good, it's going to tell you some things about what you need to work on to make the system work in that environment. Because you could have a firewall that's hurting you, you could have a port blocked, and you may not even know what any of this is, but the time to work with your IT group to make sure you overcome these hurdles is as soon as possible and not the day before Governor's Cup. These things are really simple for your IT people to take care of, but they need time to be able to do it. So that's what the test connection process looks like. And again, it's on a variety of pages on our website. It's on the support page for online competition under technical considerations. It's right there. And it's on a lot of other pages right up here. So now, are you again seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Another thing you should do on this computer you're going to be using to host matches is to turn off screensavers and any power saving features. You don't want the screen to go dark in the middle of the match. This is mainly for players, but it's important for you as well, because it'll look like you temporarily left the match if the screen should go, all bubbly or, fish in an aquarium or whatever. So take care of that before you start. And use a headset like I'm using right now, if you can, because it will significantly improve the audio quality. Now, if my dog who's right next to me barks and I'm using a headset, you're still going to hear it. But if I use a headset, you probably won't hear me rustling papers. You probably won't hear my wife in another Zoom meeting in another room, and you won't hear people walking by. It'll really clean up the audio channel. And as we said in the very first slide, quick recall is mainly an audio activity. So do everything you can to improve audio quality. But if you plug your headset into your computer with a wire like this one, it's going to channel all the audio from the system into your headset. And you want the ring-in sound to play so that the players can hear it. So if you can, use external speakers or a Bluetooth speaker to play sounds. So it's easy to do, but you can set your headset up to just use the microphone, but to play sounds through external speakers or through a Bluetooth speaker. And then those sounds will get picked up by this little microphone and channeled into the conference so everybody can hear it. So that's about your device and your network. Now let's turn to the players. And let me just stop for a minute. And because I'm flapping my jaws and saying who knows what, and I don't want to ignore the possibility that you've had questions that you've typed into the chat window, and I want to address any in real time if they're there. Rodney, do you see any?
None at this time.
Okay, just let me know, because I would rather stop and deal with something in real time than wait till the end. Okay, so back to the players' devices. Once again, think about where the players are going to be when they're competing, not in day-to-day practice, but look, skip ahead 2 months, Governor's Cup, where are they going to be? That's where you want them to try to connect to you. I'd advise, if you can, to have them use a cell phone with a data plan instead of a device using Wi-Fi. Why is that? Well, if you have a cell phone with an unlimited data plan, that whole bandwidth of internet communication is totally yours. So it'll be faster. If you use a Wi-Fi connection to connect your device to the cloud, then you're sharing that Wi-Fi bandwidth with, as a player, with your mother, your father, your siblings, and who knows what they're streaming. So it's much better to use a data plan and a cell phone to compete than it is to use that device connected with Wi-Fi. So first part of that is cell phone. Second part is data plan, if you can. Use Chrome as a browser because the players are going to be signing in through the browser as well. And they should do a test connection as well, because that'll tell them if they've got any port blockages in their network. And they should, in particular, turn off any screensavers. You know, my cell phone's right here in my pocket. I think I've got it set for 30 seconds. Pretty sure that it's going to go dark if I don't touch it for the next 30 seconds. We'll wait and see. So before I use this in competition, I'll go into the display settings on the cell phone, and I'll extend them out to like 30 minutes, something ridiculous, so that it won't go to sleep. Because if the phone that the players are using, or even the computer that the players are using to compete with, if it goes to sleep in the middle of the match, it'll look to Rodney and to you as a host as if that person has logged out. They'll just have to wake up their device. There, it just went to sleep. Now it went back. So extend the amount of time before your device goes to sleep.
We actually have a question in the chat if you have a moment.
You bet. I'll stop.
All right. The question is, we have a student who cannot get into QuizBowl PRO. We use it for practice and he will select his name and it says he is on his end, but he isn't on our end. So it says it's logged in on his side, but when the host is looking at it, it says he is not. We had this same issue in our match this week. He wasn't able to compete at all. He has tried on his iPad and his laptop and does not have a phone.
Okay, so this player is probably in the same location using these various devices. So I would run a test connection, have them navigate to the test connection button, and have them click that on the various devices and see if the blockage is on the player's end. It's unlikely that it's on the host end because the other players are logged in successfully, I assume. So you've got 7 students in and 1 student not in. If that student's having a problem, it's more likely on his or her end. I would go back through this list right here. I do the test connection, and I would try a different browser. If they're not using Chrome, try Chrome. I would also try to use, well, you said that they don't have access to a cell phone with a data plan. Since they're a student, do they have access to one they can temporarily use just to see if they can play that way? That's one possibility. And if none of that works, then you may have to consider having them play from a different location. Because, you know, if let's say they've got a Comcast connection to the internet, there's no way they're going to be able to call Comcast technical support and get them to help with that connection in that one household in the United States. So they may have to go to a different location or be on a network, a different network. But please write to me if you have a question like this. My email address is Victor, VICTOR, at QuizBowlSystems.com, and we'll track this down with you and figure out what's going on. The last thing we want to do is to wait until 2 days before Governor's Cup to get an issue like this to need to track down. We may get it tracked down, but we need help. So give us as much lead time as you can. Was there something else, Rodney?
No, but I will piggyback on that.
Okay.
On iPads, it does not work on Safari. So I wouldn't even try that if I were you.
Okay. So use Chrome if you can. If you don't have it, download it. I haven't heard from anyone else that Safari isn't working. So I'll jot that down and I'll take a look at that.
There was a question. I can type that answer. So
Okay.
they're just wanting your email address.
Sure. Rodney, when you said that you have trouble with Safari, does it give you a specific message when you try to use it?
For me, when you try to enter the match ID, once you enter it, the screen goes completely white.
It goes white.
And it will not load anything.
So you see the login, but when you enter the login info, it goes white.
The screen goes completely white. Yes, sir.
Okay. And when did this happen?
I've tried this several times on several different iPads.
Okay.
Most
I'll look in.
recently today.
Okay. We'll look into that. That's so we're getting access to the database where all this stuff is stored, or else you wouldn't be able to log in. So I'm not sure what that is, but we'll investigate it. I've never heard of that being a problem. So in this case, not only write to me, but I'd appreciate it if you take a screenshot of what you see. Now, in your case, Rodney, you'd see this white screen, but you could just tell me that. But if you see a screen that presents a red error message or something you don't expect, if you can take a picture of it and email that along with your message to me, that would be really helpful. That'll be the first thing we ask for, is show us where this happened and what message you got.
And
Good.
just to confirm, your email is victor@quizbowlsystems.com.
Yes, it is.
Okay, got it.
Sure
It's
is.
in the chat if anyone needs it.
Yeah, and if anyone can't get me for any reason, go through John Bennett. He has a variety of ways to get in touch with me. Okay, back to this players, devices, and network slide for the last point. If, let's say that the player is using a cell phone with a data plan, or they're using a PC and they're using the built-in microphone and speakers, well, the speakers are going to be playing out loud and the microphone is going to be picking up a bunch of ambient noise. So in the same way that it's good for you to play with a headset or host it with a headset, it would be good for them to use earbuds or a headset as well to improve the audio quality. I have a question for you, and any one of you can answer. Sorry, I live in Chicago, and this is a main thoroughfare for the fire engines. Although this one's particularly loud. In your rules for virtual competition, is it required that all of the players' microphones be on at all times?
I'll chime in first. It's not mandatory, but I know we've had several that hold practices to where they have all their players mute their mics, and then once they have buzzed in, they unmute themselves, answer the question, and then mute themselves again.
Yes, that's a very good approach. If your rules allow it, that's another very good way to keep the audio channel nice and clean, because then there's only maybe one person's microphone active, that being the moderator, until someone rings in, and then you can unmute. It's particularly nice and convenient, if you're doing that sort of thing, to have the Zoom operator muting and unmuting if a central person has to do it, and have somebody else running the QuizBowl PRO system. That's an excellent way to divide the responsibilities to get this done. Okay, so I promised you, even if you do everything right, there will be something. It's 2020. There's always something new that happens. If we were to all meet at the same time tomorrow, there'd be some sort of glitch in the audio and the video. There's always something like that. So if you should find yourself in one of those ditches, don't panic. For example, if a player can't get their device audio to work, even if it's worked before, but it's competition time, remember that they can use their computer audio or their cell phone audio or whatever, but there's also usually a number that they can dial. If my earphones hadn't worked, I could have picked up my phone and dialed into this conference. So don't forget that you've got that low-tech sort of a net underneath your high wire act, and you can do that rather than stopping the match in order to figure out what's going on with that one person's audio. Have them try to do something different. And if a player can't get connected, ask them to use a different device if they have access to one. Or Rodney, you mentioned because somebody might not be able to get in, there is a way for you to ring in for them manually. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. And will you show that when we turn to
Absolutely.
the computer? Okay, good. And last thing on this slide, I think, is if anything doesn't look right to you or to your players, refresh your browser. That helps a lot of things because everything's in the database. And when you refresh, Your browser session goes out to the database and it gets the latest version of the program. It gets the latest state of your game, who's playing, what teams are playing, what the score is. A lot of issues will go away if you do that. And remember, I put an asterisk here. I said, occasionally you may ask a player to use a different device. Well, you should have a plan B too. Be a good idea to have that because you just never know. It's 2020. Okay. So here are my last two parting thoughts. I promised you I wouldn't talk very long. Since you're working with so many technology components and so many players, and almost all of these players are not sitting next to one another where they can help one another, they're all distant. So it's like you're as a moderator, you got 8 students and 2 coaches, but mainly you got these eight players who most likely are separate from you. So you're like doing live tech support with 8 people. So give yourself a little bit extra time. If you think a typical match should last 30 minutes, if you've got control over your schedule, pad it a little bit because it may take you a little bit longer to get everybody online, a little bit longer to get everybody's audio working. Just take your time. And I'm assuming that when you're hosting a tournament, that you're in charge of the schedule. Maybe you can't start till a particular time, but maybe you can space out the matches a little bit if you have control of it. Give yourself some time. There are a lot of balls in the air. And the last thought I have for you is not just practice, 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 but make sure it's good practice. Always practice in the same place on the same computer and network where you're going to be doing your competition. If you practice from your classroom every day for the next 2 months, and then on Governor's Cup Day, you go to a different place to run the system where you've never been, or one of the players goes to another place or uses a different device or a different network, I call that walking the plank. Good luck, because it might work and it might not. So see if you can find a nice, safe place where everything's working fine for you and stay there. That's the best thing that I can suggest. So that's all I have in terms of planned remarks, and I'm happy to answer questions. Turn it over to you, Rodney, and let me help you if you have some things that you want me to comment on. It's all yours.
I actually have a question for you before I get started.
Okay.
And I don't know if anyone else has run into this issue, but during practices or matches, after about 5 or 6 questions, when someone buzzes in, I don't hear it on the host end, and I end up having to refresh the browser. Is there a reason why that happens?
If there's a reason we haven't found it yet, we have been looking for the source of that problem for quite some time, and we're still looking for it. I apologize for that, but the reason why I put the bullet point in the slide about having 2 people is that if you're the moderator and you're running the system like you do in practice, you might be looking at the page of questions and not looking at the screen. And if it doesn't make a noise, you don't know when to stop reading. But if you've got a partner in crime who's watching that screen, maybe it's the Zoom operator watching the screen while you're running QuizBowl Pro and reading, maybe that Zoom operator can say, hold on, Grayson, John, and spot for you verbally to get you through that. Refreshing will help generally. Using a PC will help generally, but that's an issue that many coaches have identified, and we're doing our best to try to figure out what the source of it is. Don't be surprised by it. It will happen from time to time.
Gotcha. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you
You bet.
very, very much. Are there any other questions that, if you want to unmute yourself, you can, or you can send it in the chat? Question. Do you suggest a device, computer, etc., for each person, i.e., the moderator, the spotter, each active team member, the coach, etc.?
Yes, assuming that you're physically distant from one another, you're going to need a device for each of those people anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a requirement that a player have both a computer and a cell phone to play on, because on the same cell phone or on the same computer, they could use one browser tab to get into Zoom and use another browser tab to get into QuizBowl Pro. It's not because they're using Zoom so that you can hear them and they can hear you. You're using Zoom and having their camera on so you can see them. They don't need to see you. So Don't think that you have to have two devices. You can use just one and use different browser tabs for those different things. Did I answer the question? Let's make sure I covered it all.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You had said that we should all use, as a host, we should use a PC, but the students should use a phone. Did I get that right?
Well, if they have access to one, a cell phone.
For them, it's better to use a phone than a PC, but for the host, it's better to use the PC?
Well, I'm cutting corners a little bit there, Rita. I'm assuming that the cell phone has a data plan and that they can use the data plan to connect to the internet rather than a Wi-Fi device like a router.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I prefer a cell phone, because then all the bandwidth available through the data plan is dedicated to that device rather than being shared in the house. But that's the only reason.
Oh, okay. Okay. So if nobody else was on their PC in the house, they'd be fine anyway.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then there's no reason why as a host we should use a phone. In fact, we probably shouldn't.
Well, you can technically. It does work because, you just launch a browser and you sign in and you create a match and you run it. It's a small display, so it's harder to see. And we've had more reports of the sound problem that Rodney just described. We've had more reports of that for hosts using Chromebooks than we have for PCs.
Okay.
So
okay.
It may be purely anecdotal. It may be a rabbit's foot, but if you've got access to a PC, try that first.
Yeah. Okay. That's no problem. I just wanted to get that clarify that the host should be using the PC, and it's better if the students use the cell phone. And I'm sure that's not a problem on either side.
Right. And I'll follow up with a little story from, what was it, last Saturday when we had the 6th grade showcase. We had one team in one site that was using school issued Chromebooks, and they hadn't done a connection test before they showed up to play, as far as I can tell, because everybody else was fine except for this one team using, and I underline this, school issued Chromebooks, which means they've been configured by a group of people who know what they're doing. And they may have, since they didn't know about our product, they may have inadvertently blocked something. So think about what device the players are going to use. And if it's school issued, you may have to help your players by talking to your IT group who may have configured those devices. Whereas a cell phone sitting in the player's pocket has not been configured by the IT group at your school. It's unlikely to have the sort of blockage issues that are typically in place, that the IT people put in place to help you. I mean, they're not doing this to make life hard for us. They're doing this to try to keep us out of trouble. And our program, QuizBowl PRO, requires that 4 specific ports be open in order for it to run properly. 3 of them are pretty common. 1 of them is unusual, and it's noted on our technical considerations page on our website. If you go to quizbowlsystems.com, support, technical considerations, you'll see that we list those 4 ports, and that 4th one is the one that they typically have to clear if you're on a school network. Get these things ironed out ahead of time. Yes.
Got a question in the chat. You've mentioned PC and Chromebooks and cell phones. What about Mac devices, iMac, MacBook, etc.?
Oh yeah, those are fine. A MacBook is a fine device. When I use the term computer, I'm mentioning or I'm pointing to, and I don't want to get technical because I'm not all that technical, but a multi-user operating system is something like Windows or the operating system that's on a Mac. Those are stronger, more robust operating systems than iOS, which is what an iPhone or iPad uses, or Android, which a lot of cell phones and Chromebooks use. But Chrome OS, if students are using Chrome OS is a multitasking operating system. So I'd put it sort of in the middle. That's why I default to computers, Macs and PCs, above Chromebooks, above cell phones and tablets for hosting. Anything else?
I'm seeing nothing in the chat. If anyone else have any questions for Victor. All right, I'm hearing none. So I think we'll do the switch here at this point.
Okay, I'm stopping sharing.
All right, so now I'm going to share mine. So, can you see the two screens that I have up right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have to minimize the Zoom part of it because I'm going to be doing two things at once. So on the left side, I have the host page up. On the right side, I have a player page. So one of the first things you're going to have to do is you have to create your teams. So I'm using mine. As you can see, I have my teams entered, number of players. This is where if you have to add someone or take someone out, use the pencil and you can either delete that player or come down to add a player, add that player's name, and then always hit save. Because you can't set up your matches until you have your teams entered. And one thing you'll notice and when I make the match, I'll show you what I did. So we're going to create a match. So for Governor's Cup coming up, you're going to be looking at anywhere from 3 to 5 teams in a tournament. So if it's a 3-team, you only need one Zoom or Microsoft Team or Google Meet. So I'm going to create a match. I would always label it what round and what match it is. So round 1, match 1. And since I'm in elementary, I'm going to use KAC Elementary School. Team 1 is going to be C1. Now, what I've done here, you notice that I put this C. This is the person that is designated as the captain. That helps me as the person spotting. That helps me know who's going to be the one answering the bonus questions. So that's just my way of annotating. I would also do that on whatever platform you are using, whether it be Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. That way you just have a visual of who's answering the questions. So since rounds are untimed right now, we deactivate this button. And then you just go through and make sure everything is set to where it needs to be. Notice we have added the timeout features. You want to make sure that the display timer on the player screens is enabled. That way the players can see how much time they have. Once you've done that, you're going to create your match. So your match ID over here is what you're going to give your team. The only ones that need it initially are your starting 4. So I'm going to come over here to the player screen and I'm going to type in 8VDB5G. I'm going to hit submit. This is the next screen they're going to see. I put myself on KAC2 and there I am. I'm going to enter the match.
You're about to find something new we just put in the system, Rodney. If
Got to join.
you got to start the match, and then when you're ready, then they can come in. So unfortunately, you have to redo that. Apologize.
No worries. So as the host, I have entered. I see the 4 who are starting. The host has joined, so I need to do this again. So I have learned something new. Now I am in. So now your kids are going to say, well, I don't have the ring in button. That's because I haven't done one of two things. Before a match, we always do a buzzer check. So you hit ring in test. Now my ring in button has come up. So there we go. My buzzer works. And I need to move you out of the way. As a host, I reset. And for giggles, we're going to say everyone's good. I'm going to end that test. And notice once I ended the ring in test, my ring in buzzer went away over here on the player side. It doesn't come back until I'm ready to play the first question. And questions being read. I know the answer, I buzz in. So this is going to show up on not just the host side, but it's also going to show up on the players' screens as well. And let's say I got it correct. Yay me. So now the bonus question. And you know the new the new rule is 10 seconds to deliberate. If my team gets it incorrect, the next team gets 10 seconds to answer. And what Victor was talking about, that I can control them. Now, do I just click on them or?
Yes. Right, but you need to be, go ahead and end this. You're in a bonus. Change to a toss-up, and then you'll be able to do that. There you go. So now if you play a question,
Okay,
if Melissa's buzzer isn't working and Melissa gets your attention, you can click there manually. That's also a good way for you to practice. When you don't have any students with you, you can simulate ring ins and practice what you need to do.
So, and if someone, and we had this earlier, we had a student who was randomly, they had what we called the phantom buzz. So like 1 minute they would have this X, the next minute it would disappear, it would come back, and then all of a sudden they would buzz in and they haven't touched a thing.
I have a theory about that. Do you want me to?
Yes, by all means.
Okay. We saw this earlier on in our rollout of this program before we had a sub players button. You know, if you close this question down, if you click the end question button,
yes.
If you look at the bottom of the screen, you've got an orange sub players button. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and click that. The way that you substitute players is you don't kick them out and you don't go edit the roster. You just substitute them. So if you want to change out Melissa for somebody else on your team, Rodney, you're just going to go and pick a different player for that spot. And when you do that, it's going to log Melissa out and give Jackie a spot to go through that process you went through before to log in. Before we had this button, what you had to do was to go back to setup and physically edit Melissa's name out and put in Jackie. And that left Melissa logged in as a ghost player. So what I'm saying is that I think that we have covered all our bases here. And if you follow the sub players process to swap players in and out, then we've eliminated the possibility for somebody who doesn't think he or she is playing to somehow be able to ring in. We haven't seen any of this ghost ring in stuff as long as people haven't been editing the roster manually after the match has started. This is time for me to stop and ask you, Rodney, when this happened and if you were editing the roster or if you were just subbing players in and out.
It actually happened an hour before we came on here, and we were in the middle of a match.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard about that in about a month. I apologize for that. Is there any way that you could document for me what you might have been doing, like 3 or 4 steps leading up to that? After this, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything, any clues you can give us, any crumbs on the little path leading us out of the forest or leading us in will help us greatly.
Gotcha.
Because that problem seems to have gone away. Thanks for mentioning that.
All right. Aside from that, am I missing anything as far as setup or how matches run, anything of that nature?
No, you're doing a fine job. There's only there are 2 things I want to ask about, but I can ask about them after you're done showing everything you wanted to show about how to run the match.
Well, at this point, that's it generally. Just know that for district, if you have a 3-team district, you'll only need 1 QuizBowl Pro. If you have a 4-team, you'll need 2. Regionals, that's going to be 8 teams. So you're going to need, for the first 2 rounds, you'll need 4 people running QuizBowl Pro.
Good point. Here's something, the last thing I'd show in the product, Rodney, is if you click the in match button, like, kids are virtually shaking hands. This is done. Go ahead and click yes to close out the match. That brings you back to the what we call the host setting screen, and you can see that match is marked as completed. Now, Rodney, if you'll go back into the match, if you click the match ID, there. Once a match has been completed, then all the other buttons that had been there that allowed you to run the system are gone. But what's more important is the players are logged out. They're booted in a technical sense. They've been logged out. You can see over here on Rodney's other browser tab that the players in this match, when you ended the match formally, got booted out to the match ID or the player login screen, and they can't get back in because this match is over. So it's good behavior, good form to play all the way through, and when it's totally done, click in match, and then no one can be signed into that match because it's over. It's like, I was going to tell a little story, but it makes me sound too old. But let's just say, if you make a mess, clean it up. So if you run a match and you got people logged in, make sure before you go on to the next match that you've got that match closed out, and then everybody will be out of that match and available to log into a new match. They'll just highlight this match ID on Rodney's right-hand side. They'll put in a new match ID, and then they'll go back in.
And good thing I thought about this. You know how in Governor's Cup we have multiple rounds? We are not able to kind of foreshadow, who's playing in those later rounds. So you will have to go in and make a match ID for every match in those later rounds. But like round 1, those teams who are playing, so you can make those matches easily. But you don't know round 2, match 3. You don't know what 2 teams are going to be in the loser bracket, so you can't pre-make that match. So you'll have to make it once those teams are done, and then announce it through Zoom or whatever platform you're using.
Yeah, very good point. Can I check on something with you, Rodney? And if it turns out to be the case, make a recommendation?
Sure.
About something? Okay. If you take us on your host screen back to the host settings, notice that Rodney's going to go up there to a little menu. And if you go to host settings, yeah, it'll take you back to that sort of match list. Let's create a new match. So Rodney's going to create a new match by clicking on that blue button, and you can go ahead and give the match a name if you want, but it's not really needed. One of the things we've recently added that Rodney took advantage of very nicely early on in his presentation was that he used this settings drop down where it currently says you have no match settings. He used that to go choose a settings file, because we can play lots of different types of matches with this system. It's got lots of options. But Rodney, what I wanted to check out was, rather than choosing one of these, I'd like for you to scroll down to the settings. Not there, but click, pull the elevator. If you look at the settings down below for toss-ups and bonuses.
Oh, right here?
Yes, they should already be set for you. So take a look at those options and make sure that they're right, because if they are already right, then all you have to do to create a match is name it, choose your teams, and click create the match.
Now, for you elementary coaches, be careful because toss-ups for middle and high school are 5 seconds. Elementary, we are 10 seconds.
Ah, okay.
Keep that in mind.
So what you're telling me is that the virtual rules are different for high school, middle, and elementary.
Well, middle and high school have the same rules. It's elementary that's different. They have 10-second toss-up, 10-second bonus.
And that's the only change.
That's the only difference.
Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll go create, if you go back up to that list of match settings, yeah, if you go right up there, right now, if you choose elementary, middle, or high, it's going to have the settings for face-to-face competitions. What I'll do is I'll go create another setting, and we'll call that first one where it says quick recall virtual.
Yes.
We're going to call that high school and middle, and I'll put another one in there for elementary, so that if you're an elementary teacher, if you pick elementary virtual, you won't have to turn off the timer. Because if you choose elementary, we assume you're face-to-face. You know, remember, Rodney, you had to turn off the timer?
Right.
Yeah. So I can go create a settings file that has all the settings just exactly the way you need them for elementary school competition, and I can share that with all the hosts. So it'll be in that list for you to choose from tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Oh, the other thing, Rodney,
Mm-hmm.
if you go down to selecting a team,
Yes.
one thing I heard from a coach last week, one of your colleagues, choose a team if you would. Either team is fine. One of them has a C for the captain.
Yes. We'll use mine since mine.
Okay. Okay. So this is fine as long as Rodney is the only captain you're going to have in the match. But if Rodney's going to be the captain for the first 10 questions, and then Melissa is going to be the captain for the next 10 questions, you're going to need to go in and edit Melissa in the roster to have that C and to take the C behind Rodney out. And that's going to be going in and editing the roster in the middle of the match, which we always caution against. So if you could have multiple captains, what somebody suggested to me last week is to put the captain always in the number one position. And that way you didn't have to put the C behind it.
Okay.
So if that works for you, that would be a way for you to just leave the names the way they are and denote the captain by whoever's in the number one position. Do that if you want, but it would be a good idea not to be editing the names in the middle of the match. That can lead to ghostly ring-ins.
And then if you wanted to put that designation on their screen name, because I know in Zoom you can go in and manually change the person's name.
Yes.
So it could be the school name, student's name, and then in parentheses, a C or captain.
Good idea. Really good idea.
All right.
This is Rita. I do have a question. Is that if it's okay?
Oh, by all means.
Sure.
How does the bonus work? I haven't been, because of COVID, we haven't been in the league this year or doing anything. So how can they talk to each other if they're in different areas without the other team hearing?
Well, that's the curse of it. So
Okay.
let's say KAC2 got the toss-up correct. Bonus questions red. For those 10 seconds, it's just my team talking. So team one is literally hearing everything that we're saying. And then when that 10 seconds is up, the moderator is going to say, captain, answer. I give my response, say final answer to denote that that's the end of my response. And if it's incorrect, the moderator is going to go, okay, KAC1, you have 10 seconds. Now team one is talking, and then team two is going to be muted. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So that what you're saying is the second team doesn't have to answer right away. They get 10 seconds to discuss it.
That is a new rule, yes.
After they've listened to the other team discuss the wrong answer.
Correct.
Okay. And maybe they had 3 or 4 answers and one of them was correct, but they didn't choose it. But that's life.
And that has happened.
Yeah.
Happened at 6th grade showcase. Someone said the right answer and the captain said the wrong answer. The other team heard the right answer and basically won the match by 1 question.
But that's not good, but that's life, you know.
Yeah, I don't know how to get around it. Technically, the only way we could get around it is if somehow we tied the audio into QuizBowl Pro so that it knew to turn off the speakers for the rebounding team. And we haven't achieved that level of integration yet. I'm not even sure if it's possible, but it's certainly something we'd like to do.
That would require a special kind of hooking and coding that I know a little bit about, but it's a little beyond my technical expertise. But I have an idea of how it works.
Yeah.
So we could probably sit down and figure that out.
We'll work on it. If it's an achievable goal, we'll get there eventually. Maybe not by Governor's Cup, but maybe by the end of this competition year. But we've certainly wanted to be able to do that. We do have a couple of chats, and I'm sorry I let you down, Rodney. As soon as you took the con, I stopped paying attention to the chat, so I may have missed some in here. But
do you want me to leave these screens up, or you want me to close them out?
Well, you can close that one perhaps, but they're not getting in the way at all.
Okay.
TJ Metcalf, not DJ Metcalf, the fastest player in the NFL, but TJ Metcalf asks, will there be additional trainings on this or email instructions sent out from KAAC?
We have 3, I believe, 3 more after this one coming, especially 2 before Governor's Cup.
Right. And there are instructional videos on the KAAC site.
And this one's being recorded as we speak.
Okay.
So John wanted me to send it to him, and then he's going to send it out.
Good. Another question is, so technically, if there's a mathematics bonus, team 2, the rebounding team, gets 20 seconds. And I guess that's just the way it is.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question from Mara. I believe you said you should only enter your starting 4 players' name. Was that correct? What if I have 7 players? Can I enter all their names at the beginning, but just pick my first 4 from the drop-down box? Wouldn't that make it easier for substitutions if the other 3 names are in there? Yes, yes, yes. That's the right behavior. Put in everybody, including those who are not in. That's exactly what we want to encourage you to do. You've got 15 buckets to put in 15 names. Go ahead, fill them out. Don't be editing that roster in the middle of the match. Do exactly what you've written here in your chat. Use the sub players button to sub in and out players. Don't edit. Good suggestion. I'm sorry I didn't point that out more clearly.
I think what I was trying to say was, if you have an idea of who your starters are already, like you know who your 4 rock stars are, list those names first.
Yes.
So that when the person who's controlling QuizBowl Pro puts the names in, your starters are already the first 4 listed. So those are going to be the first 4 names that come up.
Yeah, that'll save you a step. They're already in the right spot. Just click play.
That's what I was meaning. I may have made that confusing. For that, I apologize.
Yeah, I should have pointed it out too. There's a question: who has access to the control screen? The moderator, the coaches, the judge? And the answer is only one person is logged into the hosting account in a particular match. Only one person is looking at this QuizBowl Pro screen and clicking the play question button and starting timers and marking things right or wrong. Only one person should be in that account, and only one can be logged into that account. If you need to see that screen, if you're another judge, or you're an opposing coach, or you're a parent, and or if you're a player who's not in the match and you want to see that play screen, the way to share that screen is with Zoom or Google Meet or GoToMeeting. It's not something you share inside QuizBowl Pro. Remember, audio video, and this is video, is about the conferencing system and not about QuizBowl Pro. Okay, looks like I said something that caused another question. I've been told QuizBowl Pro will notify the host if a player opens a second tab. Is this true? On some browsers, if a player changes from looking at QuizBowl Pro to another program, maybe Google, to go ask it for the answer, on some browsers that will make it look as if you've logged out on the host screen. So the best behavior you can encourage for players is stay on that play screen when you're playing. Don't go anywhere else. Some browsers, it doesn't work that way, but that is a feature of some browsers and the way that we communicate with them. Let me scroll back up. Who has access to control? Chris asked, just to confirm, you mentioned PC and Chromebooks and cell phones. I assume Mac. I think that's the last one you read, Rodney.
Yes, sir.
So
that
I
was
think
the last one I read.
I think we're caught up on the chat window. Thanks everybody for those really good questions.
All right. Do we have any other questions, concerns? You know what? I feel very rude. I did not introduce myself or Vector. My name is Rodney Holt. I'm a quick recall trainer for KAAC. I am in Region 1 over in Paducah, Kentucky.
And I'm Victor Kluck. I'm the designer of QuizBowl Pro. I live and work on the south side of Chicago, right along the lakefront, very near the Museum of Science and Industry, if you've ever visited here. And very happy to see you use this program. And in particular, what I've appreciated is you're sharing your feedback with us about what your experiences have been, because not only have you been able to point us to problems we didn't know were there, which allowed us to fix them and, for the benefit of everybody, but a lot of you have had really good suggestions for how to improve the system. And we've been working on adding capabilities to this system literally for 2 months straight. So please communicate with us, not just the bad. We need to hear that. We want also to hear the good, especially your ideas about how to improve it, because it moves along with you. We're all in this new uncharted water together and figuring our best way through it. And there's some things we can do in the program that could help you. Just help us identify those. Thank you.
Had a question well, two questions. One, any quick recall trainings that I can share? I do not know of any, but if you send me your contact information, I will do my best to get you certified. Someone asked about how to call timeouts. You would do it as you normally would. Just unmute yourself, call the timeout, but remember it has to be within the parameters of, can be between a toss-up and bonus. It can only be after an incorrect toss-up or after a bonus. All right, and I'm going to copy this email address real quick. Any other questions? Yes, online certification is on the site, but I think this person is asking about being coach certified. If you're a new coach, you have to have the online certification does not cover that. So. All right, well, if there are no other questions, we actually ended this with an hour. Oh, is there a place that has the virtual changes? Yes, it's in the new quick recall manual. If you go to KAAC.com and go to coaches and downloads, download the quick recall manual. The new rules changes are in the very front. 1920 certifications are still valid for this year, yes. Login information for QuizBowl Pro. If you are registered if you're registered for Governor's Cup, it should be your your coach email address.
Yeah, you're going to use a particular sign up form that we've created that John Bennett distributes. If you're new to this process and you want to go set up your hosting account, please don't go through the typical process of subscribing, because then you will arrive at a page that asks you to pay. You don't have to pay for this because you're getting it through Governor's Cup. So click on the link that John Bennett has distributed that takes you to a KAAC specific sign up form, and it will allow you to create your entry. You'll enter your first name and last name. You'll, as Rodney said, you'll put your email address in. You'll identify a password to use to get into the system, and you'll be able to subscribe without having to pay. And then that's the login information that you'll use. So in the end, the answer to this question is you don't find the login information, you create your login information and you remember it and use it each time you log in. Looks like there's another question. Since I've already set up my account for my school, do I use the same one for hosting district?
Yes.
Technically, yeah, sure.
Yes.
One of these questions, Rodney, it's really nice to have two sets of eyes on this stuff, because I was reading it totally differently. When someone was asking about new stuff, I automatically think software. If you would you show your hosting screen one more time?
Yes.
Because there's something that I want to point out if you've never seen this before. With a product like this in the cloud, the way we communicate with you is we sort of put the news up at the top middle of the screen.
Okay.
So if you look at Rodney's screen there, if you can maximize that.
Yes. 1 second. Okay.
There you go. Up at the top middle of the screen in red, you see our latest updates. These are things we added just this week. So we put the news up there, and we've only got room for 3 headlines. If you want to see, if you're reading a newspaper, maybe it's going to guide you to the, more to the story on page, C3. Well, if you click that read more button, that'll show you more information about what we've added, and it will also show you things that we have in development. So you can see here that right now we're working on helping you import rosters, so that, for example, if you can give me, when this is finished, if you can give me all of the rosters for all the teams that are going to be in Governor's Cup, I can import them, and you won't have to enter team names and player names. They'll already be there for you to choose from. That's what we're working on right now. And then after that, we're going to be working on a detailed mid-match score editing and reporting system, because right now all you get out of the system is the end score. You're not able to go in and, like after inquiry and rebuttal, you're not able to go in and take a point away from one team who got credit for a toss-up and give it to the team that should have gotten it. You won't be able to do that for the player. You'll be able to do that for the team. So we're working on that as well. And at some point when we finish that, we'll make it so that you can have more than 2 teams in case you want to have more students involved in a practice. I realize that quick recall is always 2 teams, but you might want to have 3 or 4 in order to involve, since each one can have 5 players, you can involve 20 students in a practice if you wanted to. Whereas with the current system, you're limited to 5 players on each of 2 teams. So that's where we put the latest news. So whenever you log in, take a look up there and see if it's new. If it's not new, ignore it. If it's new, you might want to take a look at it.
And be careful, because some things may not be applicable to KAAC.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's true. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, I'll be, I'm actually going to send this to John Bennett, and then he's going to send it out to all the coaches. And then, like I said, we'll have 3 more trainings, this exact same thing. You guys are actually the first group, so I hope it went well. We were kind of going on the fly here, so thank you guys for being patient with us. Victor, thank you for your help. Greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. You did a fine job.
All right. And if that is it, guys, thank you guys so much. And if you have any questions, I put my email in the chat. please don't hesitate to email me. I will be more than happy to help you guys out.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night, guys. Thank you again, Victor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well.
See you online soon.
Yes, sir.
Take care.